right, guys, we are back for another episode of the HotLap Production Podcast. I'm your host, Isaiah Reyes.
How we doing, everybody? Hope you guys had a good week. Ventura here.
Hi, guys, and this week we actually have a special guest on with us in the form of Mr. Andy Imhoff. He is from the Boost, Booze, and Barbecue podcast. Tell us a little bit about it. Yes, it is.
Boys, thank you for having me. I appreciate it a lot. As soon as I saw that we had other, car podcasters in the group that we're in, I was like, yes, gotta get this thing done. I apologize for the confusion earlier. I thought that you were Eastern time and you're Central time. And I'll tell you, man, those time zones, they get you.
Oh, yeah.
I'm in Arizona. We don't even have daylight savings, so it's worse for me.
But buddy, that's because you're smart. Like, we don't need daylight savings anymore. This is ridiculous.
That's fair enough. It does. I mean, for us, it's easy. Trying to remember what everybody else is in is the hard part.
So I'm about the 45th parallel, pretty close to that. So what time is it? It's 6:15. The sun has been down for 2 hours here.
Yeah, that's not right.
Yeah.
It's like this year, it seems like daylight savings came with a nice little side helping of melatonin, because it seems like every time I look up, I'm like, oh, it's 11:30. Now it's 7:15. Cool.
Yeah, that's a fact. Then why is it so hard to get up in the morning still? I don't understand.
Who knows? Because it seems like when I go to work now, even now, it's still dark when I leave and dark when I come home. So I don't think much has changed.
I'm fortunate enough to work from home. My wife is not. So she complains about that constantly. She's like, I have to leave early. It's dark. And then I come home. It's just it's a mess. And especially for car guys, because you have such a short window to work on stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So right now in my shop, I have about a 30 by 40 pole barn, no insulation. There is not enough heat that can get into that. And so it's cold all the time. It's kind of dry, except for I developed a few leaks over the summer. And so now I've got some spots where I have to make sure like my welder's not sitting where it used to sit, because there's now a drip right there, stuff like that.
Right.
But I'll tell you, man, I broke a couple of my shop lights. I don't even know how to explain it. I've got extension cords that run up to them, and I was using my cherry picker and it caught one of the cords because it was hanging too low. And I kept thinking to myself, oh, I got to fix that. But then I never did. And it broke a couple of my shop lights. So now I'm down to one shop light. Guess how much work I can get done with one shop light? Not a lot.
No. So you got to mix shop light with daylight savings time and all.
Bro, it's bad. It's real bad. Like, I have those lights still. I might as well just swap them out for the LED ones at this point. I mean, they're like the Harbor Freight Hypertech LED shop lights. They look pretty damn good, and LEDs last for 100,000 hours. It doesn't really matter what province in China they're made in. And, I should probably get like 3 or 4 of those and just plug them in. It'll actually pull less power than my fluorescent ones that I broke. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And you'll get better visibility. I promise you, it'll be a transformation that you will not believe.
Exactly.
Even if it's just the one light.
Right.
Seriously.
So what are we driving these days, my man?
I'm unfortunately down to just my farm truck. I've sold everything else off. If anybody has an SN95, but the second generation one, I forget what they call it, the New Edge. Yeah. If anybody's got one of those manual GT for like $1,000, if it runs and drives, I will take it off of your hands. It doesn't really matter how bad it looks to me, because I'm ditching all the body panels anyways.
That's fair.
I mean, I also have been thinking about the same year-ish or just a generation earlier than that Thunderbird, because I mean, I can manual swap it. That doesn't bother me too much. And I wouldn't mind having the 8.8 independent rear end.
Yep.
I'm a road race guy, so, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Funny enough, you say that. So I have a 04 GTO that I built years ago that it's got an LS motor in it. And it's, I've been dying to let my brother let me have the engine out of it so I can put it in an 88 Thunderbird turbo coupe just to have another sleeper.
Yes, hell yeah. Oh, and I'm sorry, you asked me what I'm driving now. So I have a 2016 Ford F-150 EcoBoost. It's the FX4. I haven't done anything to it except for the little sneaky. I got a boost controller on it. I put that on, I don't know, 5,000 miles into the truck. I was like, yeah, it's broken. So I put this boost controller on it. And it tops out at 21 pounds of boost. I cannot believe the ECU can handle that. It's crazy.
I used to dog the EcoBoost when I was first working at Ford, and it was so funny. My thought process changed once I had I believe it was like a 15 or a 16 King Ranch come in, and it wasn't even a 3.5, it was a 2.7. And they were having issues where they were just consuming oil. So I had a guy that was driving back and forth from El Paso to Pecos every week, and his engine had been running dry for at least 2 solid weeks. No issues. Dry, no oil in the oil pan. Although you could see where all the oil had traveled through the turbo and it just ate it all up, but nothing. I mean, it ran completely dry for a solid 2-3 weeks. Fine.
Imagine where we'd be if the RX-8 could do that.
I think we'd have one hell of a rotary at that point. I mean,
right. It would have never died.
Right. It would have been the 2JZ of Japan at that point, 1.3 liters and 2 rotors would be straight.
Man, that was, and listen, I'll put this squarely on the sales people, by the way, because when you've got like secretaries coming in going, oh, that's a pretty little car, let me get one of those. And they're like, oh yeah, no, hey, you can get the synthetic oil change. You only have to change it every 15,000 miles. Of course, it's dry in 5,000 miles.
Right.
But let's really get down to the core of what the problem was with the RX-8s. And it was just people that didn't understand rotaries at all.
No, and we both work in dealerships, so we have to take extensive amounts of product knowledge testing, which, you would think people would at least try to remember to tell their customers how to maintenance their cars. Most salesmen don't, and they barely deliver the cars correctly. So we end up having to, end up having to clean up behind them and tell them, oh no, this is how this works and this is how you do this. But yeah, you're right. I mean, as far as the rotary goes, people just didn't understand that you got to rev them out once a day. You got to hit red line. Unlike what most people think, you got to make sure every time you fill it up with gas, you got to check the oil with it. It's simple stuff. As long as you stay on top of them, man, they run forever.
Bro, my mom just bought a new Honda CRV. They asked me to help them sell her old CRV. So they bring it over and I clean it all up and everything. And I go to take it out for a drive just to make sure everything feels okay. And it is sluggish. I mean, it is a dog. It does not want to accelerate. It sounds like it's got some pinging going on. And I'm like, what? It's a K24 with 150,000 miles on it. Like, it really should not be. And literally driven by an old lady.
Right.
Very little. And just babied it around. And I spent about, I don't know, a month sitting on this thing trying to get it sold. And I continued to drive it around. And like you said, took it up into the rev range. Like every time I drove it, not every time I hit the gas, but like go ahead and take it into the rev range. After about 3 weeks of me driving it once a week and just sort of getting it up to temperature and running it through the rev range, it ran like a brand new vehicle.
Yeah, all that carbon was just gone.
Right. Yeah. Even though we have these newer cars that are, less maintenance than it used to be, you got to blow them out. You still got to get the carbon buildup out of there and make sure that you're cleaning them out regularly. Because if you don't hit them and run them all the way through the rev range, and you're just going to end up with a really unbroken in motor.
Yeah. For the listeners at home, that doesn't mean drive it like an asshole. That just means drive it in the spirit with which it's been meant to be.
Right.
My grandma did the same thing when my dad was a kid. They were having, I think the check engine light came up on their car. I forgot what kind of car it was. I could not tell you for the life of me, but they take it to a mechanic, and like a day later, he was like, I just had to floor it once, and a whole puff of black smoke came behind, and now the car's running fine. I was like, my grandma was like, fair enough. And I think charged them like, I don't know, the smallest amount of diag and went about their day.
Good.
Yeah. So luckily he was nice about it. But yeah, just some people don't, there's people now who don't even know what red line is. I have been asked at least 3 times by guests at work, like, hey, what's this red area next to these 6 and 7s up here? And I'm just like, what? Is this really where we're at now? Like, people don't know what red line is? Like,
because everybody's driving automatics these days.
Right. So the car will never get there. Even if they're flooring it, the car sometimes doesn't get close to it.
I think my craziest story as a service advisor is I did have a customer at a Volkswagen store who literally looked at me and was like, something's wrong with my transmission. She had a digital gauge, and she hadn't been using the tach. She had just been using the trip, the trip meter and the speedometer. Well, she kept driving it, and I guess one day she had accidentally switched over to the tachometer where she could see it. She's like, my car's not shifting right. And I'm like, okay. So we write it up, get in the shop, they drive it, I drive it. The car's driving fine. And so she comes to pick it up. She's like, I can't believe you guys didn't, couldn't duplicate the concern because it's happening every time I drive it. She thought that the car had to go to red line to shift, like video games. She was like, well, in the video game, it does that. And I'm like, oh my God. It's not how that works in the real world. And I was like, have you ever had a car with a tachometer? And she's just like, what's a tachometer? I'm like, the little, 1 to 7. She's like, no, my last car was a 99 something. And it just had the speedometer and the temp gauge. She's like, so I never had one. I never knew that's how it shifted. And I'm like, yeah.
I'd love to be a service writer. I'd just be like, yeah, customer is a potato head.
Yeah. There's times where like you have to write it up for the sake of the customer bringing you the car. And then you just feel bad for whatever technician gets on the car. You go back to him, you're like, dude, I'm sorry.
Like I already know it's not a concern. I know. Don't get mad at me. I know. Just drive it. Say you drove it, write a story, give it to me, and I'll tell the customer.
Do a good inspection. Let's see if we can't get something different.
Right.
Guys, I have got so many stories. So many stories. Seriously, let's just schedule like a impromptu, maybe it'll be a Patreon edition for you guys where we just get drunk and swap stories about what the fucking dealerships and auto parts guys, just the ridiculously stupid shit that they do. Oh, you need windshield wipers, manual and automatic, just stuff like that.
Trust me, we can supply those for you wholeheartedly all day.
Woman, I was working in an auto parts shop, a high performance auto parts shop in Portland, Oregon, and I had a 600-pound woman come in, and I very reluctantly said, yes, you can use the bathroom. And then as soon as she got to the bathroom, and I knew that she had not had time to get on the toilet yet, and I started hearing sounds, then I took my lunch. And when I came back, the general manager pulled me aside and was like, what is your fucking problem? Why would you do that? And they ran the hose into the store.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So we'll future cast that for an episode.
Yeah, I got retail stories that match up some similar to that too. So yeah, we definitely could.
I know you do, baby. That's the industry.
Oh yeah.
That is rough. That was smart though, taking their lunch break right after. That was 200 IQ play right there.
I'm not responsible. I was not present.
My coworkers got me back. My coworkers got me back. One guy led a junkie back to use the bathroom. I told this guy, no way you can use the bathroom. Then my coworker was like, oh yeah, bro, it's just right over here. And I had to clean that one up. That was pretty awful.
Well, guys, let's hop into some news here, which unfortunately, unlike the prior weeks before, we don't have much. I guess the automotive world is cooling down for the holidays, but one that did stick out to me was that the Mach-E trims and specs and range and all that kind of stuff is actually starting to get released now, since production is going to hit in spring. So the most interesting part of that, besides the fact that we're getting an all-electric Mustang, is that they're getting a GT trim, of all things. And they're going to end up running 480 horse with 635 foot-pounds of torque. I don't know what the range is going to be on that. Supposedly, it's supposed to be around the similar range of the lower trims, which is about 300 miles on charge, which to me is pretty good for an EV.
I've read that they're not hitting that 300 though. I've read that that's an issue with Ford. They're coming more in standard batteries rated like 210 miles. The extended batteries 270. I know they keep talking about wanting to do that 300. I don't really know what Ford's problem is with the batteries though, because it seems like the battery tech is out there. I mean, Tesla's not exactly secretive with their stuff. All their blueprints are out and everything. Now, I'm not an electrical engineer. I don't know how the batteries go together, but there definitely is some kind of a gap there that I really don't understand.
To me, I don't think it's going to be the battery powertrain all that much. I really think it's the setup that they have, considering that they're trying to build a sports-oriented EV SUV. And I mean, we all know that tires play into the range as well as the suspension setup and how everything's kind of dragging on the battery. So I think it's them trying to put performance over, matter of range in that aspect. So I think they're this is coming from somebody who's ex-Ford. Their R&D department sucks. I hate to say it just because I've been there, but normally 9 times out of 10, first-year models of anything coming from Ford have just issues. I mean, right now, even with the Explorers, we're having transmission issues on the 10 speeds, which, I mean, we've had the 10-speed out for God knows how long.
Yeah. But the same 10-speed from the Mustang Camaro?
Yeah, because the new Explorer is on a rear-wheel drive platform. So we're not even, it's not even a front wheel drive platform anymore. It's the same transmission. It's still bolting up. It's the same bell housing. The issue with it is the clutch packs aren't able to handle the amount of torque that the engines are putting out. And they're actually just flexing and crapping out on them. So even the last Ford store I was at in the 6 months I was there, I mean, I did 2 transmissions a week.
Well, that's the first iteration of having that 10-speed with a 3.5, right?
No, there's not a 3.5 anymore. It's a 4.0 in the STs, and then the base motor is a 2.3 out of the Mustang.
I thought it was a 3. Is it a 4-liter or a 3?
I'm sorry, yeah, it's a 3.0. My bad. It is a 3.0. Yeah. So it's a 3-liter.
Those are totally monstrous, though.
Oh God, the power output is ridiculous.
Yeah, they're insane. You know what they should do? They should do the same thing that they did with the Jeep Patriot diesel when they first started making those.
Mm-hmm.
When transmission started having problems, the recall, people would go in for the recall. They weren't swapping out the transmissions for a more robust one. They were reflashing the ECU to make less power.
I could see where that would work. But just considering the amount of hype that's behind the Ford Performance brand on that ST, I think they're too scared to go that route. They did start with a TCM reprogram on them. There was a TSB out on it, but considering the fact that it didn't help and it just kind of ended up tearing the transmission up more, they're at this point they're just replacing them. But the thing about it is they're not even issuing out a recall on them because not all the VIN numbers have it, but it's just really a matter of time. They're all too new at this point to where we just don't know once they get to a certain mileage when they're going to start crapping out.
I'm just waiting for them to do something like the Nissan GTR where they're like, you get 3 launches, dumbass, then you're done.
Well, and that's the thing too. I mean, yes, the ST is an all-wheel drive ST, but it's rear-wheel drive biased. I mean, they're pulling the front wheels on launches right now from factory. You put a good tune on it with no bolt-ons. I mean, it'll literally pull the front wheels off of it. So they did the engine right. They just they need a new clutch pack. That's really all it is. That's really all it is.
Ace, what were you gonna say?
If you do the whole flash the ECU to a little less power, then after that you got to make sure your service advisor explaining that right to the customer, because if they don't, then all of a sudden you have all these cars coming back. Oh, my car's making less power. My car's not. Ever since the last time you did this, now my car's doing this, and oh man, that would be a whole other headache beyond that too. So yeah, that's a lot of headache waiting.
Take it from me, that customer base that's buying those STs because they're $60,000 right now. Just they're not fun to deal with.
If I'm buying a $60,000 high performance SUV, I want that thing to run
all the
13s
time.
all the time. And then once I get like a Diablo tuner for it, I want it to run 12s all the time. I want to drive my kids to school, pick them up, and then head over to the racetrack, whoop up on some Hondas. Speaking of Hondas, by the way, getting back to the Mustang Mach-E, have you noticed how, I mean, this thing, it literally is like, it's like a Honda HRV, but a little longer, and then Mustang headlights and tail.
Yeah.
It's like they we're at the auto convention. They were like, yo, Honda, let me borrow your homework. Okay, but just don't copy it 100%. It's 100%.
Just put Mustang badges on it.
And I can't decide if I like it or not. Like there are sometimes when I see it and I go, that's pretty good looking. And then there are other times I look at it and I just go, what kind of weird, like, I don't know what animals had sex to make this thing, but they were all ugly.
I'm the same exact way. And the other day, I actually had a guest come up to me, and I was actually delivering him. He was my guest, and he was telling me like, "Oh, the Honda is talking about making a full electric CRV, but it was like in like 2024." So I was like, I'll worry about it in a couple of years then."
Right.
But he showed me like a little concept, and it was pretty sleek looking. Media, I was like, that looks like a Mach-E. Like, and I was like, and it kind of just brought it full circle with what you said, Andy. Like, it honestly does look like they took a Honda thing and just slapped a Mustang-ish front end and called it a day.
Yeah, dude, for real. And listen, the power output, and listen, electric cars, 500 horsepower is really not that difficult to get to these days. 300 horsepower, which used to be, I mean, shit, man, 360 or 300 horsepower, that's a lot, and you're getting these electric cars that are to it. But as always, it comes down to power to weight. When you have a 5,000 pound car that's making 300 horsepower, and that horsepower rating on electric motors so different, you got to kind of go with the torque instead. And electric motors make all their power down end, and they, like, if you graph the amount of power that an electric motor makes, it's almost completely opposing the RPM that it's spinning. I mean, there's all the different things that you got to kind of take into account, and then it's going through a drivetrain that has clutch packs, and maybe it's a 2-speed. Some of these manufacturers have transmissions for them now, and just it gets so complicated.
Mm-hmm.
You guys being on the dealership side, I mean, what's your tactics for explaining to the average consumer, or maybe you don't even need to? Maybe the average consumer is too stupid to really understand that horsepower in an electric car is different from horsepower in a gas car.
Well, my only experiences with Honda, which they're behind on the hybrid game to begin with. Really, the only hybrid as far as brand new cars goes right now is the CRV, besides the Insight and the Clarity. So there's nothing really performance wise that no one's buying a hybrid CRV to be able to launch it as fast as they can. The only one I can think of right now as far as SUVs goes would be the RAV4 Prime. Because like all you see on YouTube is them talking about, oh, this is the fastest Toyota besides the Supra. Like that's how it's being marketed right now. So I can understand maybe on the Toyota side they might have to have that conversation, but full electric, that's honestly, it's gonna be a learning curve for me too. And that's that retrospect. Once that time comes, I'm gonna have to take a step back and really try to understand how that works too. Because
I mean, as far as
right now.
As far as on my side, I don't even have performance electrics on my side either. But a lot of the time, you notice in the customer base, people who do buy EVs or buy hybrids or full electrics, they're pretty knowledgeable about the car prior to them even buying. A lot of the insight, a lot of like our Insight customer base, we used to work at the same Honda dealership. So Insights, what's the other one?
Isaiah,
Clarity.
Wow, my brain is just totally flaking on me. I do an impression of the Honda Insight purchasers. Ready?
Oh God.
Go. Actually, it's a hybrid, and I get 50 miles to the gallon, and your gas guzzler is killing the planet.
That's literally all the soccer moms who drive them.
Yeah, that and the Clarity. Oh man.
Yes. The Clarity customers normally are, especially like the plug-in ones, they're normally professors and stuff who like drive from college to like wear out in their beautiful estates. So like I said, most of those customers know it. I'm sorry?
The smartest, stupid people you'll ever meet.
No, exactly. But 9 times out of 10, I really don't think the issue that we had explaining turbos to customers is going to be as difficult as it is with the electrics. Electrics, to me, I think everybody's going to basically understand the concept. Whereas when we got turbos implemented into most of our vehicle ranges, from trucks all the way down to compact cars, that was a hard thing to help customers understand. Just because they didn't understand the noises that it was supposed to make, the surge that it was supposed to make, things like that, or how they're supposed to maintain it. I mean, I still have customers that used to come to me from Ford that would just be like, I'm not buying a V8. I'm not buying the V6 because it's not going to be able to tow my trailer. And I'm just like, you don't realize that V6 is going to out tow your V8. no trouble, and you're going to get better gas mileage. It's just it's a mindset thing for people that there's no replacement for displacement, but we're so far past that it's a shame.
Dude, I put so I have 2 mods to my truck. I have a manual boost controller, and then I also have a non-recirculating, so a vent to atmosphere blow off valve. You know the kind of looks I get from people when I'm driving, especially other performance guys. Like if I'm driving through a neighborhood and I see some dudes outside working on their cars, I always floor it and then let off of the gas and just let that 20 pounds of boost completely vent to atmosphere. And just, I mean, you want to talk about breaking necks? They're like, what what was that?
Sounds about right. I mean, like I said, I think we'll get there.
All the whizzes and the bangs and the turbo sounds, people need to embrace that,
Oh yeah. I had to explain to a couple of different guests actually. I had to explain to them that their gas mileage on their turbo cars is going to dip a little bit in the summer, especially with the summers we deal with, because it's so hot. And I was like, I promise you, and this is around like August time. It's like, just wait till it gets cooler, and you're going to notice that MPG is going to skyrocket it back up. But the turbo wants to be as cold as possible, and it's 120 outside right now. Yeah. Not even including the temperature that's in your engine right now. So like, just trust me.
Literally why I avoided driving the Kia in Arizona. Like literally the car sat there more. It sat more in Arizona than it has sat in the last 6 months when being back in Texas.
I was blessed that the speed never gave me issues, because it wasn't until Hugh actually made me realize this. Our buddy here he's one of our master techs. He drives a STI, and one of the first things he got was a boost little cork sport, whatever. I'm
the
spacing on the word right now. The Cobb tuner, Access port.
There you go.
Goddamn, Access port. He was trying to find the intake air temperature, and I think he ended up finding it. But he was like, "Yeah, man, I can't run it if it's above a certain X amount of temperature. It's gonna heat soak, blah blah blah." And I started thinking, I was like, I never worried about that in my car in the speed. And so I was just like, I got lucky that, because I didn't care what temperature it was outside. If someone was trying to run, I was running. But our boy here, he's like, nah, if it's over this temperature, I'm not doing anything besides keeping it as calm as possible. I got lucky. They didn't have issue.
I'm not trying to be a dick, but like, that is such a Subaru STI guy thing to do. Oh no, bro, sorry.
I mean, it is. I'm not gonna lie, but I mean, I guess kind of rightfully so, because everyone knows at some point in time you're going to have. You're going to have some engine issues. You know what I mean? So
yeah, with him, yeah, especially.
I get it. But I was talking about STI guy thing to do. Apparently, there's like this weird secret written unwritten rule. Excuse me, secret unwritten rule between WRX/STI people, that they don't race each other. They only race other cars. That's what he was telling me. And I was like, oh.
That's why. So this is going to sound weird, and the car is long gone, but I used to have a 1990 Mazda Protege, and I put 323 GTR running gear in it, and the BPT that was in it, the 1.8, I had it all worked up and forged internals and balance and head work and big turbo. It had a GTX 2876R. And that's back when the billet turbos were first
new, yeah,
right? They're brand new. And I had a Haltech Platinum Sport 1000 to run it, and just all the good stuff. It made 340-ish wheel horsepower, which I don't recommend people do through those transmissions, because those transmissions are made of champagne flutes. So they will break if you look at them wrong, but fortunately mine held together. But all the Subarus, one of my favorite things was getting on the local Subaru groups in like Facebook, and people would post like, yeah, who has the shitty white Camry? Who has the Corolla? Yeah, I got beat by a Honda Accord today. Who's running that piece of garbage? I just, it warmed my soul. I absolutely.
I saw something similar. I forgot. I was actually trying to look up something for my car, the speed, and I happened to come across this Audi forum, and it was like this guy asking a question of like basically asking or trying to verify the validity of what a speed 3 was, because he got gapped by one, and the whole story was like, there was this, I think it was a second gen speed 3 gapped me. He was like, well, what are those guys pushing? How does that work? Blah blah blah. And basically most of the comments underneath was like, bro, don't even worry about it. You're driving an Audi. He drives a Mazda.
Oh my
That was
God.
that. I was like, are you serious, bro?
So we're gonna justify the fact that you got beat by the fact that you have a higher badge. You're driving a rebadged Volkswagen, okay? And I bet you anything he probably got smoked, and it probably wasn't even an S or an RS. It was probably like a 2-liter turbo A5 or something.
Right. I don't remember what it was, but yeah, that was just I was laughing so hard that was the way they validified their feeling or that what happened was. But I drive an Audi. It's fine.
I drive an Audi. It's
That's why I love sleepers.
All right, guys, let's move into the Trek Daily Crushes this week. They're pretty period dated. I'm not going to lie to you, except for the fun truck one. So the first one is the Holy Grail of C4s, which is the ZR1 Corvette. And then we've got the first generation NSX, as well as the 95 Aston Martin DB7. So who wants to go first?
I'll take this one. This one's pretty easy for me. The C4 ZR1, very capable. You know, it was the first and only, as far as I can tell, LT1 engine to have the dual overhead cam heads, made by Lotus, of course. Lotus is always jumping in there. Lotus has done some fantastic things over the years, has also done some not so fantastic things. You know, Isuzu Impulse, I'm looking at you. But the ZR1, an absolute crusher. The problem for me is that I get like extra boner from the first gen NSX. Like I need one of those in my life. Watching the value go up on those, and don't get me wrong, the ZR1 has its collectability. No, I'm not going into the DB7. Those are ugly. They're just not. They're not for me. I think the DB7s are. That was kind of a bad time for the Aston Martins. They were in bed with Jaguar. Everything looked the same. I mean, listen, I know and I understand that like they were good vehicles, air quotes, good vehicles. But if you're talking about something that I am going to daily drive and then take to the track and enjoy, it has to be the NSX. Maybe I'm way off base. I could see myself in like a C4 ZR1 if I'm continuing to modify it and do other things to it. But like if I'm just leaving this thing stock and I'm daily driving it and I'm taking to the track, NSX all day long.
No.
I can appreciate that.
I appreciate you, man.
Yeah. I'm gonna agree on the Aston Martin. If you've listened to any of the past shows, I am very much just don't want to deal with problems in my car. I just don't want to. It's just not me. I don't care if it's even the track car. I just don't want to deal with it. And if just finding out if they were in bed with Jaguar, that was just an immediate. Even I was already thinking about it. That's just an immediate. Nope, we're not doing it. So we're crushing that. Both are very other cars I would imagine are very capable cars on the track, but I'm gonna track the ZR1, and then I'm a daily the NSX only because I want everyone to look at me while I'm driving that NSX. Like wherever I go, to the grocery store, to a car meet, wherever I go, I know everyone's gonna be right here, and I'm just gonna be ecstatic about it. So that's where I'm at with that.
I completely agree with you. I'm going the same route, only really because the C4 is like the hidden gem of Corvettes right now. They're cheap. They're very, very easy to work on. And they're just, they handle better than you think, even though they're like almost 40 years old. But the ZR1 is a special one for me. So I'm definitely going to track that one. And I'm going to daily the NSX, like you said, just because pop-up up and down headlights and a T-top. How much 90s nostalgia can you get with pop-up up and down headlights and a T-top? And then not to mention that you're going to get that 3-liter VTEC sound. Need I say more?
When they were made, I mean, that was true supercar territory. It truly was. Yeah. I mean, they would keep up with the Ferraris of the day. They would keep up with the Lamborghinis of the day. I mean, when people think Lamborghini now, they think about the underground racing 3,000 horsepower Gallardos and stuff. Back in the 90s, they were making that shit. They were making track. They were horrible. They were still communists making this shit. They were garbage.
The wonderful Italian electrics.
Oh, they were horrible. Nobody collects those. If you'll notice with the Italian supercars, we go, 60s to early 70s and then like late 90s, 2000s on up. Why the gap? Oh, why? Because they were garbage during that part in the middle. I mean, nobody wants the Magnum PI Ferrari, everybody thinks, oh man, that'd be so amazing. And then you get one, you're like, oh, this thing's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
It's not fast. It overheats. None of the electrics work. The gated shifter is trash. The synchros are horrible. I mean, it's not there's a reason why you can pick up an 80s Ferrari for $13,000 because nobody wants them.
Right.
Yeah. The only for Italian car to me that's worth it in the late 80s is the Ferrari F40. Now it's just because it's literally a literal race track car for the street. They put airbag.
Right. But there's always been that separation, though. I shouldn't say always, but during that time period, there was a separation between their I almost said passenger cars, consumer vehicles, the ones they were selling people, just your everyday Joe Schmo, and then they were the race models.
Mm-hmm.
And Ferrari famously talked about not wanting to do that. All of his vehicles were supposed to be race ready, but no, I mean a lot of those vehicles in the late 70s, 80s, they were not. I don't know. I mean, listen, they were fast for the time, but like nothing was fast during that time.
No, everybody was going through the oil crisis and the the what's the word I'm looking for? Emissions loss.
Right.
So we, whatever. Before we move on to the next one, Ventura, just to caveat on your whole I'm crushing the DB7. Let me let you know that not only were they in bed with Jaguar was owned by Ford at that time. So when you got into one of those Aston Martins, a lot of the running gear that you saw with your vents and your, switches and things were like out of a Taurus and not even like a nice Lincoln. It was
really
Taurus stuff.
Yeah.
So hey, before we move on, can I just throw out a real quick one?
Yeah.
Would you buy a DB7 if it had a 3.5 liter EcoBoost in it?
Yes. Why wouldn't I?
Ventura, what do you think?
That 3.5 is nice in anything. So why not?
I mean, you have to update the electrics just to get it in there. So I mean, you don't have to worry about your little piddly I'm gonna have problems thing.
Bro, if you want like a clout car, something that's gonna make you famous on the internet for a half a day, swap one of those into a DB7. Fuck yeah.
You know what's crazy too is the DB7s haven't like lost their value in the last 10 to 15 years. You'd think that they'd be like 10, 15 grand by now, but they haven't dipped like lower than 40 grand. You're still paying like 50, 60 G's just to get one with high mileage. It's stupid.
It's the aluminum.
Yeah. Well, the next one, we've got the Colorado ZR2, the new Ranger Raptor that's coming out, and then Ventura's favorite here, the Tacoma TRD.
When we say track, are we actually like track or
let's
like
use this one as
type?
Off-road. We'll say we'll put it on a trail.
Put it in its element. We'll put it
there
in
you go.
element.
There you go.
Okay, cool. Fair enough.
Climbing the snow mounds at the mall.
Yeah.
Which most of them that's all they'll ever see.
Oh man. So I'm gonna crush the ZR2. I just don't like the Colorado. I don't. There's something about when I get inside of one that I don't feel it. I'm just not. There's something about it. Yeah. It's a lot smaller than the other two. It's typical Chevy interiors. Now, granted, I've never been in a ZR2, but
It's no different.
Take that for a little.
It's no different. It's the same crappy vinyl interior. It's disgusting.
So yeah, I just don't like it. I'm sure it performs well. Exterior wise, it looks nice, but it's just the interior and everything about everything else going on. I don't like it. I've been so much more comfortable in the Tacoma and the Ranger.
Ventura, if I may, I don't know if you're a concealed carry guy or like me, I always have a pocket knife on me. The thing about the Colorado interior is when you're getting in and out and you start catching everything on all of the vinyl bits.
Yeah.
At a certain point, you've spent $45,000 on this truck. You've had it for 6 months. The steering wheel's all cut up. The center console that you sit against, because you're sitting in there tight. I mean, I don't know. They tried to give it like a sports car feel or something, but instead it just feels like I'm sitting inside of a tuna can. Yeah, no, you're not going to be happy with that at all. As a matter of fact, the Colorado, believe it or not, is what made me decide to go with a full-size truck, because I sat in a Tacoma. I sat in the Colorado, I even sat in a pre-production Ranger, because that was a thing we did before COVID hit, and I lost all my car shows that I could go to. I'm not bitter about it though. Yeah, that's what made me decide to go with a full size, because realistically, when you start talking about, oh, it's 6 inches longer, it's 3 inches wider. And look, I get it. People can say all day long, oh, well, it makes a difference when you're trying to park in downtown Portland. Yeah, well, I don't want my tires slashed, so I don't go in downtown Portland. You know, I don't have to worry about that there. I'm 100% with you. The ZR1 is out for me. The TRD, you know, I mean, it's cool. It's the ubiquitous overland vehicle right now. That Raptor though, I'm all about it. The Cummins 2.8 diesel that comes in the Colorados, that's kind of cool. I like that concept, but you're not really rock crawling with the Colorado. And I mean, in theory, so I guess where I'm at is I kind of want to see somebody moving slowly over some very rough terrain using that diesel for the purpose which I feel that it would be intended, because you can't really, it says you can tow 7,000 pounds with that rig. I'm not sure I'd want to tow 7,000 pounds with a Colorado. I think that'd feel pretty weird. And I feel like I'd end up looping it on some snowy pass. But that Ranger Raptor, that's not a tow vehicle. It's strictly a performance off-road vehicle. It's got 350 horsepower. It's literally, an access port or a 5-star tuning away from, who knows, 425 horsepower, 450 horsepower. So for me, that's where I'm going to land.
That's fair. Yeah, I'd probably daily the Ranger, and then if we're going off road, probably use the Tacoma.
Mm-hmm.
That Ranger is it was so comfortable. Like if I would, like right now, honestly, if I were to go buy a mid-sized truck, as much as it might pay me, I would heavily consider that Ranger. Even like not even taking outside the Raptor, I might heavily consider Ranger over a Tacoma. Because when we drove it at Barry, or we were in the ride along, I should say, at Barry.
Right, we didn't get to drive it.
I was impressed. I was thoroughly impressed.
Yeah, no, that ride is smooth.
When we were at the last Portland International Auto Show, we got to preview everything because we were media, quote unquote. God, isn't that the best thing about having the podcast? By the way, you get a few listeners, you put out some articles, suddenly you like give it to them, and they can go, "Oh yeah, he's part of the media." Get in for free, get to check all this stuff out. I got to sit in a pre-production Jeep Gladiator 2 years ago that literally, like, the body seams had been glued 3 days prior. They
oh god,
and then they shipped it. I don't even think it had a VIN. Like, it was so pre-production. It was amazing.
Good old Jeep, Dodge, Chrysler, Ram.
Oh yeah, all day long. They're last minute at everything. For me, I'm with y'all. It was hard for me to say no to the Duramax. Ventura knows why. But yes, I am going to crush the Colorado, but I'm going to flop it. I'm going to off-road track the Ranger only because it gets fitted with the same suspension bits from the same manufacturer, which is Fox, as the Raptor, the actual Raptor does. So you do get all the flexing and the independent suspension and all the good off-roading bits to go with it. So I'm definitely going to off-road that. And did the Tacoma mainly because you can get it in a manual. That's really my reasoning behind that.
Fair I didn't even think about that. That's fair enough.
Yeah. And last one to me is kind of fun, just because these are all cars I have lusted after as a sleeper guy. So first up is the 99 Regal GS supercharged version. We've got the 1990 Ford Taurus SHO and the highly sought after for me 97 Maxima SE with the manual.
Isaiah, I think you should take this one.
For me, I'm gonna be honest with you, it was super hard. I've driven all three of these cars at some point in my life. The Regal for me is definitely the track car, just because outside of the fact that it's not a manual, it fries torque converters. It's just the power that comes out of that thing is immense. I don't know if you've ever been in one, but literally those 3800 series GM V6s with the supercharger is stout. So I'm going to take that one to the track. I'm going to daily the show because still to this day, 30 years later, no one knows what those cars are. And I'm gonna crush the Maxima, only because the 97 for me is the most sleeper because it's literally just a box shape, but it just doesn't have that super sleeper factor like the show does, because the show is literally just a box on wheels at that point.
It's a fucking Taurus.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're driving a mom car with a manual and a Japanese built V6 with dual overhead cams. I love that car.
So this one's tricky. So I think I'm going to, in all of its glory, crush the show.
Oh my god.
I think a lot of this has to do is I don't have any kind of spiritual connection with the show.
You gotta drive one.
I respect every aspect of what that car represents, but I personally have owned a Buick that had a very similar, was 3.6 you said?
No, it was a 3800 series. It just didn't have the supercharger.
Oh, okay, right. So then to throw the supercharger on it and still be comfortable at the same time, like, yeah. So I'm gonna daily that, so that way, because no one's expecting a Buick to roll up next to you, especially this day and age of Buick where this was your grandpa's car.
Yes,
this was absolutely your grandpa's car. So to pull up and somehow bait someone and then just take off on them, oh, be beautiful. And
you're not going to take off them. You're going to put a cloud of smoke next to them and then take off.
and then I'll track the Maxima just because it has the manual, and I've seen them, with the nice kits and wheels and suspension and whatnot. So there's ways to get it to where it needs to be on the track. So that's where I'm at.
I'm not normally a follower, but I'm kind of with you, Ventura. Listen, I have sordid histories with all of these because I grew up in an area where all my buddies, we loved sleepers. We were all about the sleepers. My cousin had a Honda EG6 hatch that had a Type R motor and transmission in it with a bunch of work, and made 240 naturally aspirated horsepower, which if anybody knows their Hondas out there, they know that's a fucking lot of horsepower coming out of those 1.8s.
Yeah.
I just grew up in an area where for some reason people were really, really into the sleepers. And so I've actually driven, rode in, or raced, one or a combination of all of those. The Regal, I used to race against a guy and then got a bunch of ride-alongs with him where he had an upgraded ECU, some different injectors. As a matter of fact, he switched over to a map system with one of the other GM ECUs that runs on map and has full tunability. I forget what the designation is, but it was kind of a best kept secret in the late 90s. And he had a smaller pulley on the supercharger and some different work done to it. And it made, I think, 400 horsepower at the tire. Keep in mind, the Regals were not necessarily fast at the time. I mean, they were like a low 15-second car, which, okay, for the time, that was pretty quick.
That's quick,
but in nowadays talk, that's not exactly fast, but this is a dude that was probably somewhere in like the high 13s after he did some work to the car. So it was very quick for the time being. I also had a buddy that had a manual first-gen Ford Taurus. I wondered why you didn't put the second-gen Taurus show on there. And then I realized the second-gen Taurus show, even though it was a V8 instead of the V6, it made literally 4 more horsepower, and it was not available with a manual. So that makes sense why we wouldn't have that on here. But he had one of those manual transmission. The only things he had done to it were like Hoosier sticky rubbers in the front and an upgraded clutch and a nitrous kit. And it made shitloads of horsepower, and he would race people all the time, roasting them through second gear, barking into third gear, and just blowing past like all kinds of fast cars back in the day. And then, believe it or not, I actually had a buddy that had one of these Maximas, and he had a big single turbo setup on it, and it made ungodly amounts of horsepower. As a matter of fact, his ultimate goal was to swap in the VG33, which is the single cam truck motor, but they're known for being extraordinarily tough. I mean, making 500 horsepower on stock bottom end is ridiculous stuff. So I have kind of this weird connection to all of these cars. And you took me out of my element for a second when I read this list. I was like, oh, I don't know which I want to do with this. The bottom line for me is the Ford Taurus, there's really not suspension out there for it.
Mm-mm.
That's just the long and the short of it.
Yeah, no.
So I'm gonna have to get rid of that one. Unfortunately, the Maxima, the manual, I'll probably make that my track because there are upgrades for it. K-Sport makes coilovers, just stuff like that. Like you can make it handle, and it has the Nissan reliability. And then I guess daily / track, because I'm going to be taken to the drag strip. I would definitely have the Regal GS. I would do all the good stuff. I would have some kind of an ECU tune. I'd have the smaller supercharger pulley. Hell, man, I might throw a dry nitrous kit on it just because. If I could get that down into the 12s, looking like a Regal GS, I would be a happy camper. I'd drive that all day, every day, and I would absolutely blow the doors off of any STI or WRX or whatever one next to me, because they ain't racing each other apparently.
No, I'm right. When there was one that had popped up, it was like a one owner 99 Pontiac GTP, but it was the 2-door version. So it wasn't the 4-door Grand Prix, it was the 2-door. And I had taken Ventura out to go get his Buick service at the Buick dealer. Was there. Guy wanted, I think they wanted like $9,000 for it, right? But it had under 100,000 miles. It was clean. We took it out for a test drive. I was just like, I really want this car. Like literally daily driving that and being able to just put your foot in it and it's just going to move is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. I actually surveyed STI drivers who had been beat by a GTP or a Regal GS. And the number one thing that they said after racing that car was, fuck!
I love it.
It makes sense. It really does. I mean, it was hard for me just because like the show for me, because it's yes, it's V6, yes, it's still a Taurus, but that red line for its time, it was what, 73 or 7,500 RPM just because it was Yamaha built. I mean, it was outrunning all kinds of things, V8s from the day. So I mean,
the sound.
Dual overhead cams, 3 liters, and 7,500 RPM. You can't beat that. It's just perfect. It's perfect.
I don't know how substantiated this is, but it's a story that I heard. Apparently, after the Toyota MR2 made its way stateside and was a huge hit, and then the Fiero was planned to come out, Ford started this project where they were going to make their own mid-engine sports car as well to compete with the Fiero. And then once the Fiero came out and they realized what an absolute piece of dog shit it was, Ford said, well, we don't need that mid-engine car design anymore. And they tossed it, but they still had this engine that they had licensed through Yamaha. And so higher up beat counters just said, man, throw it in a Taurus. We'll make a performance version of that. I don't know how true that story is, but I've read several articles from the 90s talk about that.
Yeah, no, that is definitely accurate. Which I still feel like they could have done with that engine, especially if they would have done bounds of sales with that platform. Just because, I mean, at the time SVO was turning into SVT. So I mean, and we saw all the cars that we got from SVT from 93 all the way into 2004. So I mean, we know they can build a car. So with that mid-engine, oh bro, because I'm sure at some point we would have got at some point we got a twin turbo version or a supercharged version along with it. Forget it, we've been fine.
Oh yeah, imagine like a Ford RS 320.
Yeah. Oh,
get me?
Yeah,
all day long. Well, I mean, again, I always have to remind myself, British Ford got all the good stuff. We just got the hand-me-downs apparently, and even though we're the American parent company.
Yeah, but we got the better teeth,
This is true.
Hey, I love everything you're doing here. I cannot thank you enough for having me on. Seriously, we are going live on Twitch, twitch.tv/boostboozbbq in about an hour. Okay. And I hope that you're able to join us. Hop in the comments. We're going to be talking about a bunch of fun stuff. I hope your listeners out there will join us. We record live. It's a weird time, Sundays at 8 p.m. Pacific time. It's a very strange time to go out live, but it just makes things a lot easier on me because then I just download the video, upload it to places, boom, we're done. So hopefully, if they like what they heard today, they'll come and check us out. Of course, Boost Booze and Barbecue on any podcast platform, at Boost Booze BBQ on Instagram and Facebook. And once again, I love you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
No, it was great having you, my man.
We appreciate you coming on. It was a good time.
Thank you, gentlemen. Hopefully this is not the last.
Oh, no, sir. Not at all.
I hope not. Also, I love the shirt. In case you didn't realize from our conversation today, I love the shirt.
You would, buddy. I was wearing it for you.
Yeah, there it is.
All right, we'll talk to you later, my man.
All right, take care, guys. Peace.
Later.
All right, guys. Well, that is the end of this week's episode. It was awesome having another guest on. Of course, if you can give us feedback on everything that's going on, we greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Go to Apple Podcasts. Give us a 5-star review. But this was awesome.
Super fun. Make sure you go give Andy a follow or subscription. Check out his podcast.
For sure.
Boost Booze and Barbecue. I keep almost mixing it up, but hopefully we can keep doing this with him. Maybe one day, I don't know, swap shows and we go, guest star with him, whatever the case may be. But
right.
Go support him. More above all, no shade, support us, of course. And we'll keep it pushing. So me and Isaiah are hoping we can make some good things come out of this. So the more you support us, the more we can give you. So just keep that in mind, and of course, stay safe.
Yeah, we'll see you next week. You have a good one.
Take it easy.